Hey, IOStax here. Welcome to Coaching the Coach, a video series in which I look at all the mainstream YouTubers that offer coaching on their channels and show you how their lack of competence leads Overwatch players onto the wrong lead, wasting their time by completely misinterpreting gameplay. Today, I want to have a look at the, in my opinion, worst offender, YourOverwatch. In this video, Weagle is looking at a Platinum Tracer VOD. First of all, big respect for the player that sent his VODs to these guys. It takes a lot of courage to send in your gameplay and be critiqued in front of thousands of viewers, so I really want to give him some props. Starting things off, I want you to listen to what he's saying right at the start here.
As a Tracer player myself, I'm going to be quite harsh on our friend here, but we're going to
Well then, let's have a look at how harsh he is going to be then, shall we?
And the team comp's not great. There's a D.Va, Orisa, terrible tank comp, but it doesn't matter too much because we're playing at a kind of a lower level, and the enemy team also don't have a great setup either.
Platinum is an above average rank, and team comp is definitely something that should be taken into consideration. Now, I don't want to get too deep into team comp here because it won't help the player much, but telling the coachee that team comp is irrelevant because he's at a low rank is really bad. Especially if he doesn't even define what he considers a low rank. Going for synergy and proper lineups is something that you should always try to improve, even if you're in Platinum. I know that it won't always be applicable unless you group up with friends, but especially once the player starts climbing, adapting his pick to his team comp is important.
Either. So straight away in this first fight, our tanks don't initiate, so our Tracer's just trying to get a...
Weagle mentions that the tanks don't initiate, but I don't think he realizes that the player is playing Tracer, meaning that there is no way the tanks will reach the point before him. The fact that Mercy is currently healing that Tracer shows that her team is behind her. The tanks can't just teleport onto the point.
Just trying to get a pick here. Now, there's not a lot to take from this team fight because it's super messy, but as our Tracer player, what I would say here is you really should be trying to prioritize a target, and it's always good to swap between targets as Tracer, but you have to pick the right target to swap to, and here you shoot 3 or 4 different people within like a 5-second space, and there's no way you were going to confirm any of them kills, so it's good to try and actually focus on the right target. Anna might have been pretty good there as well. Of course, a typical ultimate waste. I know you're trying to clutch out the point, but when you're down that much, usually you're better off always saving your ultimate for the next fight.
The first problem that I would like to point out here is that the player decides to peek the point via the same entrance that the enemies used. This is problematic because he's exposing himself to the entire enemy team, and especially against a Roadhog, that is a very bad idea. Instead, he should have used the entrance from the side or go behind the enemy team. The blink right here into the enemy team was kind of unnecessary. The player was already at a pretty good range and no one from the enemy team was looking at him. After the blink, however, he's in the middle of the enemy team, and the fact that he is so incredibly close to the target he is trying to shoot makes it really difficult to track properly. This right here is a very similar situation. He could have simply walked towards the Genji to get into a good range. However, he uses up one of his blinks just to get way too close anyways, making him miss his first shots. He eventually uses his recall because the enemy Genji could get some right clicks into him since he was so close. Right here, the player uses 3 blinks back to back, leaving him completely starved of resources as he starts chasing the Roadhog. He won't be able to dodge any of Roadhog's shots, let alone his hook. As Tracer, you always want to have at least 1 blink available. Only use blinks if they are absolutely necessary or you are capped at 3 blinks. Blinks give you options. Without blinks, you are reliant on the enemies not punishing you. Once again, the player decides to blink through the Roadhog for no reason. He can use that blink to dodge swift strikes or hooks, but instead he blinks through the Roadhog. The problem with that blink was that the Roadhog wasn't even looking at him. If Roadhog was looking at him, then that blink would have disoriented him. However, since Roadhog ignores the player, that blink confuses no one but the player himself. Checking the kill feed and the fact that we don't need to charge our ultimate since we already have it, this would be a great time to disengage and leave them the point. Sadly, the player neither has his recall nor any blinks left as he wasted a bunch of them earlier. Needless to say, this pulse pump would not have done anything even if it hit. He could have used it to stick the Roadhog in a retake attempt and get some early kills. However, this ultimate did not give him the point or otherwise put him into a favorable situation. Alright, so now that you know my perspective on this entire team fight, let's have a listen to what Weagle thinks of it.
Fight. Now, if we break this fight back down, it's actually more positive than negative. There's some really good stuff in here that you don't notice on first glance. So straight away, you want to fight the soldier and you're thinking about blinking in, but you see the Roadhog and you back up with your team and stay safe. That's just a good play straight away. Now, here is the section I was talking about where you kind of get a little bit confused. You think you'll fight D.Va, and then you think you'll fight Soldier, and then you kind of go for Lucio, and then you blink and you get lost, and then you try and kill the Soldier again, and then you swap back to someone else. And right here, you realize that you're struggling prioritizing, and you then focus on this Soldier to take him out of the fight. Your Reaper joins you in this, which is so important to focus fire and take out the main DPS threat. And you manage to clean up that guy, which is so good. Your Lucio gets a really good boop and gets the guy off the map. Now, unfortunately, in this time, which is probably why you did need to decide who you were killing a little bit quicker, is some of your teammates have died by the time you kind of win out this fight, and you actually end up losing. You do struggle with the priority on the Roadhog and the Genji too. I'm not sure what one would have been better, and then the Pulse Bomb also gets wasted at the end, and you lose the fight. So you've kind of thrown an ultimate out there, and I don't think you even played terribly here. I've got to be honest, it was pretty good mostly. If you just isolate that target a bit quicker and keep your Pulse Bomb for the next fight and regroup, that's a much better situation than what ended up happening, which is unfortunate, but there's definitely a lot of positives coming up in this game, so don't worry.
Can we have that clip from earlier again, please?
As a Tracer player myself, I'm going to be quite harsh on our friend here, but I'm going to be quite harsh.
No offense, but what you said about that team fight was the exact opposite of harsh, and you didn't give the player anything constructive. You commentated what he did. You didn't analyze, you didn't make any suggestions, you didn't give the coachee anything that he probably didn't figure out by himself.
Second, and one thing I want to mention about this Tracer player straight away is that for a gold plat player, the blink management is very, very good.
I want you to keep this statement in the back of your head when rewatching this particular clip right here. No, this was not good blink management. I want you to focus on two things in this clip right here. For one, instead of strafing side to side to make himself a more difficult target to hit, the player keeps walking towards his enemies, which makes hitting them a lot more difficult. And getting closer to a soldier or Roadhog as a Tracer is not a good idea anyways. And also, I want you to look at this player's blink management. Just keep an eye out on how many blinks he has. Keep in mind that you should only use your last blink if you really need it. And then look at how often he ends up using his last blink.
This is just really, really solid fundamentals and knowledge on getting in and helping your teammates. This is really good because a lot of people keep fighting that D.Va or the Roadhog, which I've seen a lot from this game as well, and we'll highlight that in a minute. Bit of an
Yes, Weagle, this player definitely shouldn't work on his blink management because it's already really, really good.
Is one thing that I think Taria here could actually learn the most, I would say, is actually aiming a little bit. I would say that the sensitivity you're using is too high, or if it's not high, there's some control issues there. Now, this could be multiple things. This could be the sensitivity, but also if your DPI is too low on Overwatch, you get this weird bobble on your crosshair at all times. And I slowed some of this gameplay down, and you'll see that even when you're stationary and you shouldn't really be moving your mouse, the crosshair is still moving. So I would assume this is a super high sensitivity, so I'd definitely recommend bringing that down. But a DPI, and one that most people play on, is 1600. Some of the pros play on slightly lower, but if you make it too low, it causes issues with your aiming. So 1600 DPI, and then just take the sensitivity where you want it in game. Mine's like 1.5 or something, which is still quite high because the DPI is high, but you need to be careful with that because a lot of people make this mistake. If your DPI is too low, your aim's really dodgy, and it actually pixel skips is what it's called, and it will skip when you're trying to aim at people, which isn't helpful at all.
Oh man, okay. Let's get our composure back up. So, first of all, a 1600 DPI and like 1.5 cents is not too high, okay? The average pro sensitivity would be around 1600 and 2.5, and that's also the same sensitivity that I use. And no, 1.5 at 1600 DPI is not too high. Secondly, the reason this player's aim is not that great is not because of pixel skipping. the pixel skipping is a thing that usually happens if your in-game sensitivity is, I think if it's too high, like above 4, then yes, pixel skipping can occur. But it's something so minor and irrelevant, and the player, the coach here, really shouldn't care about this at all. You shouldn't base your DPI on whether, you have pixel skipping or not. You should base it on your Windows sensitivity. So the reason that I use 1600 DPI is because I have a secondary monitor with a very high resolution, so I need high DPI so that my cursor isn't like super slow. Okay. Now, I actually know why his aim is bad, and I'll get to that in a second, but the reason I am mentioning all this is because Weagle gave the coachee a couple of solutions to his aim problem. His sensitivity could be too high, he could have pixel skipping, or he could just practice with drills. No offense to the player, but out of those 3 options, which do you reckon the player will choose? The player will probably blame pixel skipping and his sensitivity first, instead of just realizing that without practice, his aim won't get better. And the fact that this guy's movement plays a major role in why his aim is subpar has not been mentioned so far, but let's get into that now. Okay, so my microphone probably sounds a bit different because I need to record this live with OBS, but basically I have the recording up here again, and I want to show you exactly why this guy's aim is all over the place. So I have this little thingy. Okay, this is way too large. This little tool that I can like draw stuff with. And what we're going to do is we're just going to trace this guy's head. Okay, I could track any other part of his body, but I just want to show this to you, okay? So we are going to let this play for a bit. Okay, like this, maybe 1 frame, okay. And now we'll just connect the line, okay. And then we're going to go back. Okay, just let this play for a little while and then draw again. Okay, and also you can skip ahead in case this is a bit too boring for you, but I just want to kind of showcase this to you. Okay, so now not too much happened there, okay. But, he's still pretty far away from his crosshair, so, not too amazing. Okay, so now he makes, like, some pretty weird movements again. Okay, so it's kind of a line like this. Okay. Also, I'm sorry for the dinosaur noises, but apparently Weagle in slow motion sounds a bit like a T-Rex. I bet there are people who would like to make a conspiracy theory out of this. Okay, but let's just continue with this drawing, okay? It's kind of like we have a little loop-de-loop man. Like, Six Flags could really make an attraction out of this, okay? And now it kind of starts to go, a little bit further down the mess. Ooh, and we're almost off the screen. Let's just give this another line to her head. Okay. And yeah, now she's basically off the screen. So I'm just going to draw this like this, okay? Now, the thing is, because this player is walking towards the diva here, okay? And I'm actually going to speed up the playback a bit here, just so that you can kind of see this. Also, shut the fuck up, Weagle. Okay, there we go. So I just want you to look at this again, okay? So you can see how red is kind of tracking the yellow line, okay? And now, the thing is, tracking this yellow line is really difficult because there are a lot of like edges and curves, and most importantly, it's really long. And the reason this happens is because this player is way too close to the diva. So if you look at the frame right here, the player is actually at a, like, I would say an optimal distance to the diva. He's not so far away that he doesn't deal any damage anymore, but he's also not so close that tracking becomes super difficult. But then he starts moving towards her, and now she just flies off her screen.
Hair's still moving, so I would assume this is a super high sensitivity, so I'd definitely recommend bringing that down. But a DPI and one...
Now, I can for a fact say that this player's sensitivity is not too high, because if you look at this moment, it is very obvious that he needs to lift his mouse. This either means that his mousepad is too small, or he isn't using his arm to move his mouse. He could have a high sensitivity and use his wrist to lift, but if that's the case, then the problem is not some pixel skipping, it's that the player needs to break the habit of wrist aiming. Obviously, I am just speculating here because I can talk with the coachee, but that would be my educated guess. So I'm editing this video right now, and I realized that I'm already at like 14 minutes. And to be honest, I don't really want to go further into this. I can just move my notes over actually. So these are all of the notes that I have right here. And I think we're currently at this part, okay, so line 48. So I just mentioned that, he's giving him solutions to his aim problem and that he's, like, lifting his mouse and stuff. And I have a bunch of other notes for, like, minute 7, 8, 9, a little bonus clip at the end where he mentions that his team is trickling in, but Actually, let me show that to you because it was super funny. So it was like minute 9:30. Let me just make this invisible. Let's
This
just
last fight,
this.
no one's
Average process
regrouping.
TNT would be- Okay, so this is actually amazing. He mentions that no one is regrouping. I should probably make this bigger so that you guys can see this. There we go. Okay, so he mentions that his team isn't regrouping, but I'm not going to lie. I can see his entire team right in front of him, and the only fact is that, you know, one of them died some time ago. So, you know, the problem is not that his team isn't regrouping. Actually, you know, this team is pretty grouped up. You know, there are a lot of other things to talk about. But, so I could go over all of this extra stuff, and actually I'm going to leave a paste bin in the description with this entire document. So, you know, if you want to see him, you know, talk about his pulse bombs and his blink management and everything, you can read through that. But I just want to get to this bottom part, to the conclusion. So what Weagle does is he says that this player actually has really, really good blink management, which I completely disagree with. The player was suffering from just not understanding how to properly use his blinks and when to use them. So the idea with blinks is that you only want to use them as a resource mid-fight in order to dodge abilities and to confuse the enemy. However, most of the time the only target he was confusing was himself, and he used his blinks way too much to just get from A to B faster. And, you know, if you're one of my coaches, you'll probably, you know this from my sessions already. And next up was the pulse bomb usage. So this happened in the next round, and again, you can have a look at this. It's really, really interesting. He mentions that this guy's pulse bomb usage is actually really good at one point, but it really wasn't. He had one good pulse bomb. It was actually here, yeah. The pulse bomb on the Hawk was the first somewhat decent pulse bomb that game, and even that one was just winning a fight that was already won. If a pulse bomb helps you to win more, then it could have been used in another fight, you know, to win at all. So he looks at certain scenes in which the coachee does something kind of good, or, you know, he just doesn't do anything bad, let's just say it like this. And then he immediately makes a statement about, oh yeah, you know, this guy actually knows how to use pulse bombs. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because from just watching this clip, actually let me find it again, from just watching this entire video, I got the feeling that he hasn't watched this gameplay once before making this video. He just opened up the gameplay and he basically made a live commentary, and then in post-edit he took some clips and kind of talked over them and stuff. Also, this, by the way, was actually kind of good, like the way he went to the health pack to kind of take that away and stuff. So yes, I hope that you could take something away from this. In my opinion, this player needs to work on his blink management. He should never end up on 0 blinks until it, you know, unless it really, really needs to happen. He shouldn't try to always juke the opponents, especially if they're not looking at him. If he wants to work on his aim, he should work on his movement first. He should try to keep that perfect distance of not being too far away so that you don't deal any damage, but still being close enough so that, you know, you do deal damage, but not so close that you can't aim at them properly, because obviously the closer you get, the more erratic their movement becomes. And with his pulse bombs, in certain fights, and again, you'll see this in the docs, Weagle just called it, oh, you're wasting too much time with the Roadhog, but you can actually see that he got like 80 to 90% out of that with his ultimate. Because with Tracer, what you want to do is you want to get your ultimate as quickly as possible and use that to kind of initiate fights, because the worst situation that a Tracer can be in is in kind of a poke battle. And this is, again, just something that he completely disregarded. So I'm going to leave the link to the video from these guys down in the description, and I want you to have a look at it, you know, yourself. I just want you to read through this document, just kind of listen to my thoughts on the entire gameplay, or like actually not the entire gameplay, because, you know, I kind of had to vomit after a little while, but I just want you to watch it with these, you know, notes in mind, and then just, you know, honestly think to yourself, do you think that if you were the coachee, would his comments have helped you become a better player? And I'm quite confident that no, nothing he said in that video would have helped the player at all. Okay, so that's with this kind of, you know, slightly ranty video. Hopefully we can get some more educational stuff in the future, but I think this was also pretty educational and hopefully a little entertaining. So yeah, let me know what you thought of this, and you know, maybe if I should do it again in the future, because I actually quite enjoyed making it. And yeah, my name is Iostux, and I'd like to thank you for learning.